welcome to the University of Barbecue. My name is Lars Johnson, and wanted to invite you to my backyard. I've been barbecuing for a long time, and I'm going to give backstory over time. I started this channel because, really, because my wife was encouraging me to take this to the next level. I'm always posting pictures and videos on TikTok and on Instagram and Facebook. And she said, you know what, you should do this for, YouTube as well. And so the channel idea was born actually during the Christmas holiday of 2022. We were driving back to Texas from our hometown in Mississippi. And she said, hey, you know what, let's go ahead and set up the channel. So she set up the channel. She bought domain names, all of that. We came up with the name on the spot. We decided to go with the University of Barbecue. I'm actually a professor. But the goal here isn't to try and say I'm going to teach you about barbecue. I'm not going to call myself the professor of barbecue. I'm a guy that has enjoyed barbecuing for over 20 years. My first job was in a barbecue restaurant, Mr. Leon Brown, Fred's Barbecue in Irving, Texas. And there I fell in love with barbecue. I didn't actually get to cook barbecue. I was 15 at the time, and it was a summer job, but I did have a lot of fun eating barbecue on my lunch break. And so today, I said, you know what, I'm not going to keep stalling this. I'm going to do it. We actually had a tornado pass through the area a couple of days ago. I said, you know what, Lars, that's just another excuse not to start recording. So let's just go ahead and do this. You can see my wood piles in the back are covered in tarps. There's some things in disarray, and it's fine. It's a barbecue video. And so the primary focus is the barbecue. You're not going to focus on what's going on in the background. And so today we're going to be cooking some spare ribs. It's one of my favorite things to cook. It's one of my favorite things to eat. For me, it's a solid staple for, especially in Mississippi where I grew up. But even though, out here in Texas, brisket is probably the primary thing you think of when you think of barbecue, or you might think of sausage, turkey. Ribs are still really great here in Texas. Still a really big ticket item in terms of what a lot of the restaurants are selling. And it's just a great item to bring people together when you're having visitors over, or, when you're cooking for a family dinner, you're cooking for a party. Super easy to eat because you just can eat them right off the bone. And so we'll do some spare ribs today. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun with that. All right, so we have a slab of spare ribs here. I think they're about 5, maybe 6 pounds, somewhere in that area. As you can see, they're completely untrimmed. And so there's 2 ways you can do this. Now, where I grew up, a lot of the times you'd see folks wash these, season them up, throw them on the smoke, or throw them on the grill. They wouldn't take off any of this rib tip here. They leave on the flap meat that you get back here. And so you get all that rib tip, you get the breastbone here, you get that flap meat on the back. They may pull the membrane off. I think most folks didn't pull off the membrane growing up. So over time, I've kind of learned that I prefer to St. Louis my ribs, and a St. Louis cut is what you typically see at the barbecue restaurants, where you get more of a kind of square cut on the ribs. You're not getting the tip. Most of those restaurants are pulling that membrane off. They're definitely taking that kind of skirt piece of meat off the back, trimming off a lot of the fat. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do my basic trim. There's a couple things that I do and a couple things that I don't do. I like to take off part of the tip, not all of it. I like to leave a little bit on because I think that's kind of a prize when you're eating barbecue, that your ribs are a little longer, they're a little meatier. And so the meatier part of the tip, I'll leave that on. The thinner parts, I'll pull those off. I'll cook those separately. I'll make those rib tips out of those. I might save them. Now I'm getting into sausage making, and so I can save them for sausage. I actually don't remove the membrane. I used to. It's not because it's a headache. It's really easy to do. But what I found is that, for me at least, I don't feel like it's a necessary step. I score through it. Some people say that's cheating. It's not true barbecue. I don't really care. It's what works for me. I think that's how barbecue should work. You do what works best for you. I always take that breastbone off. That piece, when my mother-in-law was living with us, she was really big on Southern soul food cooking, and she would always throw pieces of smoked pork, pieces of smoked turkey into beans, into peas, cabbage, what have you. And so I normally smoke that piece. I have a stockpile of them in my freezer. She just came to visit not too long ago, and she took some of that back to Mississippi with her. And so I always smoke that piece and save it on the side for her. Sometimes I'll do a little soul food. I'll cook some beans, something like that. and I'll throw it in there myself. But those are normally reserved for my mother-in-law. So Ma, I got you. All right, so let's start trimming this up. I'm going to start off with removing part of this rib tip as well as part of the breastbone. And I want to get a good look at it first. So if you take a look at it, the rib tip has kind of like an equator here, right? It has kind of this line here. And so that's what's going to get you really close to the bone. This is, you're getting more of that kind of loin meat there. That's getting you really close to the bone. I like to cut a little bit above the ribs equator. And I'll start off on the breastbone side. It's a small bone here, a thicker bone. So I'll start off on this side and I'll kind of come around. And it's not the most beautiful thing to do in the world. And I probably don't cut like most chefs tell you to cut, but I've never cut myself. If I cut myself on the channel, I'll edit that out so you never know. So here, start right here, this corner here, and I'm just gonna come around slowly. You gotta have a really sharp knife for this, because otherwise it's not gonna work out for you, especially if you're trying to get through some of that breastbone meat. And the cool thing about this is you can take a couple passes here. You know, ribs typically have 8 to 10 bones in them. You get these little wee skinny bones on the end. You don't really want to cook those the same way. And so you want to figure out where those little bitty skinny bones are. And I have them right about there. And I'm going to pull right through the edge of those, kind of round this off at the end. I'll just come again. Now I've got a nice look on my ribs here. Notice they're not super boxy. I like to kind of round that edge off. I'm going to take that skirt meat off the back now. And so it's this piece right here. I'm going to pull that piece off. Okay. So I'm going to take my knife and just very closely to its edge, just get that piece off. And so now you got the membrane here, and you can put a spoon under there. You can get you a paper towel, something like that, pull that off. I'm just going to score through this. You kind of hear it going over those bones like a xylophone or someone kind of combing over some piano keys. So when I say score through it, this is what I mean here. So I've scored through that. And what I find is that that's enough really to keep it from being super tough. It'll start to break down a little bit more, even pull back a bit. I've got a bone here on the end that I don't like, but I'm going to leave that there because it follows the entire track of the meat. If it was a shorter bone, I'd pull it off, but I'm going to leave it there. So I'm going to go ahead and season these up. And so I'm using some kosher salt and some coarse ground black pepper. A lot of people use 16 mesh, 14 mesh pepper. I get this from Sam's Club. It's their coarse grind. Works just fine for me. And so I'm going to season the front and the back. I'm not going to use a binder. I don't have anything against people who use binders. Some people get all up in arms about that. I don't particularly care about that. I'm not going to use a binder because for me, again, I don't feel they're necessary. Not for how I cook. If you want to use a binder, that's fine. I'll use them on occasion. Just don't want to use one a day. So I'm going to go with a little bit of this on the back here. Not a lot, because I've got a rub that I'm also using. So this is a McGowan Smokehouse rub. And so this particular rub is local to the DFW area. Because my hands are kind of dirty, this is only reserved for cooking meat outside, and then I'll sanitize everything toward the end. That sound was my smokers popping. It was cold. Now it's getting up to temp. So that's what that was. No worries there. All right. So gonna be pretty generous with this. Now, you don't want to completely cover this and cake this on, because you do want smoke penetration in your meat. And that's something that you'll hear about in a lot of videos. If you cake this on too much, you actually end up creating a barrier, and the meat can't take on the smoke that it needs to. So make sure you're conscious of that. Be a conscientious seasoner when you're putting rub on. So on the other side now, I typically do the back side first, because if I mess up that side a little bit, it's not that big of a deal. This is your presentation side, so you want this to look nice. So I'm just giving this a shake, about 12 to 18 inches above, just to make sure that it's spread out pretty evenly. All right. Again, not a lot of that. It's a decent amount, but not as much as you would typically have on your ribs. And so I'm gonna go in now with some more of this. I've already seasoned the sides. And so now you can see I have really good coverage in terms of these spare ribs. And now it's time for them to go on the smoker. All right, folks, so we've been cooking probably for about hour and a half, almost 2 hours now. I'm cooking around 250 right now. Good thing about ribs is that if you have some temperature fluctuations, if you get some spikes, if you get some dips, not a big deal. People say it all the time, pork is very forgiving. And so let's take a look at these ribs right now, see what we are. Like I said, about an hour 30, 2 hours in. I'll probably keep these going 2.5, 3 hours. I don't really do the 3-2-1 method, so it's all about how things are looking, where things are falling. And so let's see where things are. So by my standards, these are looking really good right now. As you can see, we have some really nice color on these. You can see the pepper that's still in there. You can start to kind of see the meat starting to pull back from the bone here. And so this is just some of the myoglobin and all that running out. So you'll get those little dark spots in here. That's perfectly fine. But you're kind of starting to see more of the bones being exposed. What I'd like to see is to just have like a little pullback in this area. So you start to see the pullback. That's what I really want to see here. And so I'll cook those until I start to see some slight pullback. And then at that point, I'm going to wrap them. But right now, these are looking good. I also have those rib tips over here to the side. So those are looking really nice right now. I decided that, I'll go ahead and cook these up. We can have us a nice snack. So those are cooking right now, a little closer to the heat on the top rack. But like I said, everything's looking great right now. Really nice rendering of the fat. You'll see that fat line right there. There was a little bit over there. It's starting to render. You see some of the juice coming out there. This is what you want to see. All right, so we're about 3 hours into the cook. I actually kicked the temperature up to about 300 just so I could get the pullback that I mentioned earlier. We're at the point where we're going to wrap things, so I'm going to open this up so we can see. Okay, so as you can see here, we've got a lot of juices flowing, looking really good here. A lot of rendering of the fat, getting more of that pullback that I mentioned to you before. And so at this point, I'm going to wrap these. Also, we're getting a really good dark color on these rib tips. So you can see those there. Those are looking really good. So probably going to take these. I'll actually cut these up a little bit, and then I'll wrap these as well. And then once these get done with the wrap, they don't go back on. After I wrap the ribs, those will go back on, depending on how long they need, maybe 15 minutes, might be an hour. These probably won't go back on. They'll probably end up in a pool of sauce. That's how I like to do them. And so we'll get started with that as well. I like to wrap my ribs in foil. Some people do paper, the butcher paper, pink butcher paper, which is really, sometimes they call it peach paper, but it's really like a brown color. I like to do just regular old heavy duty foil when I wrap my ribs. I think that's a really easy way to go. I like to do a mop sauce in my ribs. Sometimes I'll do the brown sugar thing. Sometimes, I'll just do a couple butter pats and a little extra seasoning. Lately here, though, I've been more and more into a mop sauce. And so I use something like this. It's just a generic bottle that you can get at Walmart. You can get it at any type of grocery store. And I have a barbecue sauce that I make that's homemade. I'll add some of that barbecue sauce, a little more vinegar, also some Worcestershire sauce, as well as sometimes a little A1 sauce and some apple juice. And what I find is that it gives you this really nice vinegar flavor. There's a little sweet in it. There's a little savory in it. Really great flavor for the pork to take on. And so it ends up basting as it sits there in the foil. This wrap, normally I go an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Given the pullback that we have now, I'll probably go an hour with this and then finish it out 30 minutes to another hour, just depending on how things are looking in the smoker. So let's go ahead and get started with that mop sauce. All right, pop that. So move that back. I'll put some of that sauce on the foil. As you can see, it's a really thin sauce. It's not like a barbecue sauce or anything like that. Some people do barbecue sauce, and if that's what you want to do, you can definitely do that. You're going to get some moisture that's going to pull out of these ribs anyway. So you don't need a lot of this, just enough to cover it. Now take a look at the back of there. You'll see a little charring. That's perfectly fine. That's that membrane that's kind of charring on the back. I'm going to throw some sauce on that. That's not going to be a big deal after we cook. All that's going to soften up a bit, and it'll actually impart quite a bit of flavor. And so a little more mop sauce on that. And then we're gonna wrap these ribs up. We like to go this way with the wrap. And I pour that, which is awesome. I actually probably just get away with one layer here. And we're good. Now I'll put it in just like that, meat side down. Well, now on to the rib tips. So I pulled these off. They may have gone a little further than I wanted them to, but it actually might be perfect. So I'm gonna cut a piece here just to kind of see what things are looking like right here. And as you can see there, you got a lot of juice flowing right there. These are looking really good. You can pull here to kind of see where things are. They're not coming off the bone. That means they're not done yet, which is perfectly fine. So rib tips, sometimes you have bones in them, just depending on where you cut these from. These pieces came from the end of the ribs, and so there's bones here. But traditionally, the tips don't have any bones. They look just like this, and so there's no bones in them. So when you say rib tips, that's what people are looking for. Where I'm from, you expect rib tips to have bones in them because we're going to eat every bit of that. So I'm just going to cut these up into servable portions. So this right here is what you're expecting to see. Can you see that? There we go. So this right here is what you're expecting to see. It's really nice looking right there. Got a lot of juice coming out of there. They're almost done. I tasted a little piece off camera. They're almost done. Like I said, probably 30 minutes, an hour. And then I will give these a bath. That bath is going to cook them in the barbecue sauce a little bit more as well. So you're going to have to take that into consideration. But the rib tips, you want these to be a lot softer when you eat those. All right, so got everything on the foil here. I'm going to hit this with a little bit of the mop sauce just to make sure I have some moisture in there. And then I'm just going to wrap this up. All right, let's get this on. All right, so now at this point, we've had the ribs on probably about 4 hours, somewhere in there. It's time to unwrap these, and then we'll figure out how much time we need. I'm guessing anywhere from 15 minutes to maybe almost an hour. Pullback was nice before we wrapped them, so we may not need that much time. One thing that I failed to mention was that rub that I use does have a little sugar in it. And so I said before, there was a little charring on the bottom of the ribs. That came from the sugar. I actually like that because it does give you a slight char flavor, but you have to watch it. So the point at which it was when I wrapped, that was fine. If it becomes hard and super crackly, that's a problem. When it's soft, you get a nice char. It's kind of like getting a bark on a brisket. You get that nice char on the under part of the ribs. But if it gets super hard, that becomes a problem. So let's take a look at these ribs, see where we are, and make a determination as to how long they need to stay on the smoker. We'll also get those rib tips off as well. Got our rib tips up here. That's feeling nice and soft. Gonna take those off. Got to be careful when you pull those off. Super hot. Also, there may be some juices that flow. Right here we have our ribs. So let's get those off. There's gonna be a lot of juice in here. I mentioned that to you before. Wow, that's nice. Given how soft they are, they're not falling off the bone. I'm probably gonna put these back on for about 15 minutes. Go ahead, throw in a little bit of that rub, a little bit of the mop sauce, and go from there. As you can see, really nice pullback right here. Super nice pullback. I used some of those wrap juices on here. Still gonna add a little bit of the mop sauce, just a little bit, just because it imparts a slightly different flavor. And then I'm also going to add just a little bit of that rub. So a little bit of the McGowan Smokehouse rub. There's some pooling right here on the ribs. All that's gonna start to evaporate. It's gonna settle really nicely, give me a nice, very light glaze. I don't like a heavy glaze. It's gonna give me a nice, very light glaze. Let's put this back in. We're gonna go for about 15 minutes, maybe a little more. And then we'll give those ribs a chance to rest. We'll take them off and let them rest. Next thing that we wanna put on is our rib tips. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. So I've added the mop sauce. I've added a little bit of barbecue sauce on these. I'm gonna put a layer of foil on the top. I even put a little bit more of that rub on there. These are gonna go right on the smoker. And I'm throwing these right at the bottom with the ribs. Don't want to get too hot. If you take a quick peek at the ribs, you can already see that kind of glaze forming a lot of that juice that was on there. The wrap juices are starting to evaporate off. So we're getting in a good place. We're about 5 minutes in. These should be done in about 10 more minutes. We have our final products here. So first, let's take a look at our spare ribs. So I gave these 15 minutes, and then, like I said I was going to do, I let them rest.
So I give them about a 10-minute rest just to let them cool down, let things pull back together a little bit. These ribs went a little further probably than I like them to. I don't like fall off the bone ribs. I like a slight pull. We're in the very slight pull zone. So would have liked for them to go to, probably a little less in terms of the wrap. But I think the primary issue is that these are a thinner slab of ribs. When I buy ribs, I typically pick a thicker slab. These are on sale at Kroger, and they were a nice looking slab. I have a buddy on social media that he's a barbecue buddy. His name's Steven. He's up in the Chicago area. Um, Big Steve, Smoke 'em and Choke 'em barbecue. He likes the slightly thinner slabs of ribs, and so we compare notes all the time. He's a great guy, so if you're in that area, definitely check him out. I like the thicker slabs. That's just kind of my preference. And so these are a little thinner, and so get a little bit more of a fall off the bone feel than I was hoping for, but I think there's still a slight tug, which is still pretty good to me. So just to give you a look at these before I cut into them, this is what we're looking like. So let's cut into these. And most of the time when you do this, when you want to show them, you go inside somewhere one of these middle bones. That's typically where you can show the best. It's good to flip these over sometime, but I think these bones are pretty straight. So I shouldn't mangle the ribs doing this. Sometimes spare ribs, the bones, they run a little crooked, which is fine. Let's take a look at that. And that is an excellent spare rib. Nice smoke ring. Just a really good looking rib. You get some of that tip on the end, and so that's what you're seeing there. Normally they cut off there, but really beautiful color on that. That's a rib I'm happy with. There's a little shredding going on. That's because we're in the fall off the bone territory. And that's fine too. Some people prefer fall off the bone. Not my preference. We're really close to that, but still a great rib. I wouldn't turn these down whatsoever. I don't know too many people that would. And we still have our rib tips. And so let's take a look at those. As promised, they're all sauced up. So they had that sauce bath. So they got not a lot of sauce on them. These are going to pull apart real easy. You see that bone just came right out of there. And that's what you want to see with your rib tip. They're not mushy. I don't like mushy rib tips. But they do pull apart very easily. And so that'll be a really great bite. So as a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and bite it. That's good. And the rib, got to take a bite out of that as well. That's amazing. All right, folks, and so that's really it. Had the chance to cook some amazing ribs. Geez, I'm sitting. They're still here, and so I'm sitting here like they're right below me. You can't see them. I got to get some better camera equipment, but I have to smell them, and I just tasted them, and they were amazing. And yeah, we're gonna really enjoy these. And the rib tip is doing exactly what I wanted it to do in terms of pull, super flavorful, nice little morsel. This is great. Okay, boys, what's your name?
Lars.
What's your name? Lem. All right, so taste test from the boys. Both of you, pick them up, try them, let me know.
Good.
Good? Thumbs up? Awesome. All right, so thanks, folks. I really appreciate you tuning in. Like, subscribe, share. That's really helpful. I'll be doing a lot more stuff in the future. I plan on showing off some of these smokers. I got these smokers from Pristine Custom Metalworks in Louisville, Kentucky. DeMarco Williams, I mentioned before, a great guy, phenomenal builder, became a great friend. Been teaching me how to weld over Facebook Messenger and text messaging on the phone. And so I'll be showing some of the things that I've done. I built a firewood rack that's completely busted. It's ugly, but it does what it's supposed to do. I plan on building some more firewood racks that are steel, fabricating some of those to replace some of the pallets that have started to disintegrate back there, and some of the wood setup that I have, something that's a little stronger just in case the soil shifts. We have shifty soil out here. Also plan on doing some teppanyaki hibachi style cooking on my griddle. And I have a grill that I'm kind of renovating. I found a grill on Facebook Marketplace for 60 bucks, and I'm working on that one as well. And so I'll be showing that process, hopefully kind of give you an idea of what I've done to that grill to kind of change it up and make it suit my needs. So I appreciate you. You know, as I say with my fraternity brothers, barbecue and mildew, get outside, cook something, enjoy yourself, have fun, make something that helps you make memories. And I hope to see you next time. Take care.